I was leaving my wife's work party when I heard sounds from the bathroom no husband should ever hear. She walked out fixing her hair. Then I found the hidden account, the secret calls, the boy I raised for 9 years, and the man she hid from both of us. She thought she had already won. She was wrong. My name is Clayton Merritt. I'm 51 years old, and I own a plumbing contracting business out of Columbus, Ohio. Started it from scratch 22 years ago with a second-hand van and 2 employees. Now I've got 14 guys on payroll, a solid reputation in the trade, and enough work booked out to keep the lights on for the next 2 years. I'm not a flashy man. I don't drive a luxury car or wear a suit to impress anybody. What I have, I built with my hands, and I was proud of that. I married Naomi 5 years ago. She was 33, I was 42. She had a 4-year-old boy named Tyler from her previous marriage, a marriage that ended, she told me, because her ex-husband Russell just couldn't handle the responsibility of a family. Said he walked out when Tyler was barely a year old. I believed her. I stepped in. I became Tyler's dad in every way that mattered. We even agreed, early on, that we'd tell him the truth when he turned 18. That I wasn't his biological father, but that I chose him. That was supposed to be our plan. Our honest, decent plan. Naomi worked as an office manager at a mid-sized law firm downtown. Good salary, professional environment. The kind of job where you wear business clothes and go to company events. Those events were a fixture in her calendar. I mostly skipped them. Not because I was checked out. I just didn't fit in with the blazers and wine glasses crowd. Give me a job site and a thermos of coffee any day. But the Thursday before Thanksgiving, Naomi put her foot down. It's the annual holiday party, she said, her tone leaving no room for debate. My boss expects spouses to come. It matters to me, Clayton. Please. So I went. The venue was a rooftop event space in the Short North District, glass walls, rented heaters, a view of the city skyline that would have been impressive if I weren't already counting the minutes until I could leave. Naomi looked stunning. She always did when she dressed up. Dark red dress, hair done, smile turned all the way up. She kissed me on the cheek when we walked in, and then promptly drifted away into the crowd like smoke. I spent the first hour at the bar, nursing a club soda, nodding politely at people whose names I forgot the second they said them. Naomi was in her element, laughing, moving from group to group, her glass never empty. I watched her and tried to figure out when exactly we had stopped being a team at these things. Around 10:30, I decided I'd done my duty. I set down my glass, grabbed my coat from the rack near the hallway, and started toward the exit. That's when I heard it. It was coming from behind the door, marked restrooms, down a short corridor, just off the main room. Not the music, not the crowd, something else. Low voices, a woman's laugh, quick and hushed, like someone trying to keep quiet. And then a sound that hit me somewhere deep in the chest. The kind of sound no husband should ever hear, coming from behind a closed door at his wife's work party. I stopped walking. I stood there in that hallway, my coat half on, and I listened. My wife had no idea I was standing right outside that door. The handle moved. A man stepped out first, mid-40s, well-dressed, adjusting his jacket cuffs with the calm of someone who had done nothing wrong. He didn't notice me. A second later, Naomi followed. Her lipstick was uneven. Her hair had shifted. She was smiling at something he said, until she turned her head and saw me standing there. The smile died. Clayton. Her voice came out flat and sharp at the same time. What are you doing back here? I looked at her. I looked at him. And I felt something go very still inside me. Not rage, not grief. Something colder than both. I was leaving, I said. Looks like I should have left an hour ago. She followed me out. I didn't ask her to. She just appeared at my side as I pushed through the glass door into the November air, her heels clicking hard against the pavement like she was the one who had something to be angry about. Clayton, stop. Her voice was sharp. Just stop and listen to me. I stopped. Not because she asked me to, because I needed a second to make sure I said what I had to say without losing my composure. I turned around. The rooftop party hummed above us. The street was quiet. A cab rolled past and kept going. Who is he? I asked. Naomi crossed her arms. She'd grabbed her coat on the way out, but hadn't put it on, and she stood there clutching it against her chest like a shield. His name is Derek. Derek Fowler. He works in the contracts division at the firm. And what exactly are the two of you doing in that bathroom, Naomi? She looked away. A muscle in her jaw moved. It was nothing. We had too much to drink. It got out of hand for a minute, and it won't happen again. I let that sit there between us for a moment. Out of hand, I repeated, "That's your explanation. Clayton, I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated on the street. You'll stand here," I said, keeping my voice level, "and you'll talk to me like I'm your husband. Because that's what I am. Or at least I thought I was." She flinched, just slightly. Then her expression shifted. I'd seen that shift before, that pivot she did when she felt cornered, when the best defense she had was offense. "You want to know why things like this happen?" she said. "Because you're never present, Clayton. You come home smelling like pipe fittings, and you eat dinner, and you fall asleep in front of the television. When was the last time you actually looked at me?" There it was. The redirect. The way she could take something she'd done and somehow make it a referendum on my failures. I'd seen her do it before, small arguments, small moments, but never like this. Never with this much at stake. "I look at you every day," I said. "I look at you when I'm writing checks for Tyler's school. When I'm fixing the leak under the sink, you keep forgetting to mention. When I'm driving him to practice because you're working late." Again, I took a step closer. "Don't do that, Naomi. Don't stand here and turn this into something I did." Her lips pressed together. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something real flicker behind her eyes. Something that looked almost like guilt. Then it was gone. "I'm not saying it's your fault," she said, quieter now. "I'm saying we've had problems for a long time, and neither of us wanted to face them. I would have faced them if you'd come to me. That's what married people do." She didn't answer. I looked at her standing there in the cold. The woman I had built a life with, the woman I had chosen, the woman whose son I had raised as my own, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not collapse, just shift, like a load-bearing wall that had taken one too many hits and was finally starting to show it. "Go back inside," I said. "I'm going home. Clayton, I need to think." I held up a hand. "We'll talk tomorrow. But right now I need to not be standing on this sidewalk with you." I walked to my truck. She didn't follow this time. The drive home took 20 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove, hands at 10 and 2, watching the interstate lights pass overhead. By the time I pulled into our driveway, something had already shifted in my thinking. A quiet, methodical part of my brain that I usually reserved for job estimates and contractor disputes had switched on and wasn't going to switch off. I went inside. Tyler was asleep. The babysitter, our neighbor Mrs. Caldwell, gave me a quick nod from the couch and slipped out without a word. I stood in the hallway for a minute outside his door, listening to the stillness. Then I went to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up our joint phone account. I told myself I just needed to know. Just the shape of it. How long, how often, how much. What I found in the next 15 minutes made the cold air outside feel warm by comparison. Derek Fowler's number appeared 47 times in the last 2 months alone. Late evenings. Weekend afternoons. One call at 11:40 on a Tuesday night that lasted an hour and 12 minutes. The night she told me she was stuck at a client dinner. And then, further back in the call log, a number I didn't recognize. A 614 area code. Columbus local. Dozens of calls going back almost 4 months. The most recent one was 3 days ago. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and dialed it. The number rang 3 times before someone picked up. The voice that answered was cautious. A man, mid-40s by the sound of it. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who didn't pick up unknown numbers as a habit, but had made an exception tonight. "Yeah. My name is Clayton Merritt," I said. "I'm Naomi's husband. I'm looking at your number on her phone, records going back for months. I think you and I need to talk." Silence. Long enough that I thought he might hang up. Then, "How'd you get this number?" "Joint phone account." She forgot about that. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not calling to threaten you. I just want the truth. How do you know my wife?" Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Something careful had come out of it, replaced by something that sounded almost like resignation. "My name is Russell Payne," he said. "Naomi and I were married. Before you. I already suspected it." Hearing it confirmed still hit me like a cold bucket of water. "She told me you walked out on her and Tyler when the boy was barely a year old." A short, bitter sound. Not quite a laugh. "Is that what she said?" It wasn't a question. "I didn't walk out, Mr. Merritt." She filed. Said the marriage was broken beyond repair. I signed the papers because I loved her enough to let her go if that's what she needed. She took the house, half my retirement, and my truck. I was 35 years old starting from zero. He paused. "And she took Tyler." I didn't even know she was pregnant when things fell apart between us. She never told me. I sat very still at my kitchen table. The house was quiet around me. Somewhere down the hall, Tyler was asleep. You're saying you didn't know about your son, I said. Not until about 4 months ago, Russell said. I found out through a mutual friend. Old college connection. She mentioned Naomi had a boy who looked just like me. I reached out. Naomi picked up, which surprised me. We've been talking since then. He stopped. I don't know what she told you about why we were in contact, but I want you to know I never knew about Tyler. If I had, I would have been there. Whatever else you think about me, I need you to know that. I believed him. I didn't want to, but I did. There was too much raw material in his voice for it to be performance. She's been telling you the marriage is over, I said. It wasn't a question either. Quiet. She said things were complicated. I set the phone down for a second and looked at the ceiling. Then I picked it back up. Russell, I'm going to be straight with you. I found out tonight that Naomi has been seeing a man from her office. Your calls are separate from that. What I'm dealing with is bigger than one phone log. I rubbed my face with my free hand. Tyler doesn't know you exist. He calls me Dad. I've been his dad for 5 years. I know, Russell said, and his voice tightened. And I'm not here to blow up that kid's life. But I have rights I didn't even know I had until recently. I've already talked to an attorney. Good, I said, and I meant it, even though the word felt strange coming out. So have I, starting tomorrow. I hung up. I sat at that table for another 20 minutes without moving. Then I went upstairs, checked on Tyler one more time, and lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling until 4 in the morning. I didn't sleep, but by the time the sun came up, I had a plan. I called Neil Stratton at 7:15 in the morning. He was an attorney I'd used twice before, once for a contractor dispute, once when a supplier tried to stiff me on a materials order. Sharp, direct, no nonsense. Exactly what I needed. He picked up on the third ring, and I laid it all out. The bathroom, the phone records, Derek Fowler, Russell Payne, Tyler, all of it. He listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I respected about him. When I finished, he said, "Come in at 10. Don't talk to her about any of this before you get here." I didn't. When Naomi came home at 8:30, she'd apparently spent the night at a friend's place. No explanation offered. I was in the kitchen drinking coffee and reading the news on my phone like it was any other Friday morning. She studied me from the doorway like she was trying to figure out which version of me she was dealing with. "We need to talk," she said. "We will," I said. "Just not this minute. I've got a job walk at 9. It was a lie, but a clean one. She hesitated, then went upstairs. I heard the shower run. Neil's office was in a glass building off High Street, the kind of place that smelled like expensive coffee and quiet authority. I sat across from his desk and watched him take notes in that precise, unhurried way of his. "First thing," he said, setting down his pen, "assets. Before anything else, I need you to pull together everything you can find, property records, joint accounts, vehicle titles, investment statements. All of it. Can you access those from home?" "Most of them," I said. "I handle the household finances. Always have." He nodded. "Good. Because here's what I want you to look for. Any transfers, retitlings, or account changes made in the last 12 months that you didn't initiate." I looked at him. "You think she's been moving things? I think you should find out before she knows you're looking." He leaned back. People who plan exits tend to prepare the terrain first, especially when they've been at it for a while. I went home that afternoon while Naomi was at work and Tyler was at school. I sat at the kitchen table with every document I could find and my laptop open to every account we shared. It took me 2 hours. At the end of those 2 hours, I had a sick, hollow feeling in my gut that had nothing to do with betrayal and everything to do with cold, deliberate calculation. The truck, a 2021 Ford F-250 I'd bought 2 years ago for the business, registered under both our names as a tax arrangement, had been retitled 8 months ago. Her name only. The savings account we opened together for Tyler's college fund had been drained by half. $12,000. Moved in 4 separate withdrawals over 6 months, each one just under the automatic reporting threshold. And the joint credit card showed charges I had never seen: hotels, restaurants, a jewelry store receipt for something that had never arrived at our house. I photographed everything, printed what I could, put all in a folder, and drove it straight back to Neil Stratton's office. He looked through the pages without expression. Then he looked up. She's been preparing this for at least 8 months, he said. The good news is she made mistakes. Small ones, but enough. What's the bad news? The bad news is she's going to fight hard when she realizes the door has been locked from the inside. He set the folder down. The better news is, you're the one holding the key. I drove home feeling something I hadn't expected. Not relief. Not anger. Something closer to clarity. Like a job site after the demolition is done, and you can finally see the actual structure underneath. What's still standing, what needs to go, and exactly what you're working with. I picked Tyler up from school at 3 o'clock. He talked the whole ride home about a history project on the American Revolution, and I listened to every word. Whatever was coming next, he wasn't going to get caught in the crossfire. I make sure of that. Neil Stratton called me Monday morning with a tone that meant he'd been thinking over the weekend. Here's where you stand, he said. You've got financial misconduct, the retitled truck, the college fund withdrawals, the credit card charges. That's real, and it's documented. You've got phone records establishing a pattern of contact with 2 men, one of whom is a co-worker. You've got a wife who has been preparing an exit strategy for the better part of a year. He paused. What you don't have yet is full leverage. She doesn't know what you know. That's your most valuable asset right now. Don't spend it early. You're saying sit on it. I'm saying be smart about the timing. Let her think she's still in control of the narrative. Meanwhile, we build. I want a forensic accountant to go through every joint account going back 3 years. I want the vehicle retitling reviewed for potential fraud. If she forged your signature on that title transfer, that's a separate issue entirely. And I want you to keep a daily log. Dates, times, observations. Everything. I started the log that same afternoon. Kept it in a plain notebook, tucked behind a row of pipe fittings catalogs on my office shelf. Nobody was going to go looking there. Naomi came home that evening acting like Tuesday. She made dinner. She asked Tyler about school. She asked me if I'd heard back from the Worthington Avenue job. I answered everything in the same register she used. Calm, ordinary, unremarkable. If she was waiting for me to blow up or break down, she was waiting at the wrong station. That became the rhythm of the next 10 days. Her performing normal, me performing unaware. The difference was that her performance was designed to buy time, and mine was designed to buy evidence. On day 4, Neil called to tell me the forensic accountant had flagged something beyond what I'd already found. 18 months ago, Naomi had opened a personal savings account at a different bank, not one we'd ever used together. She'd been making deposits into it every 2 weeks. Small amounts, irregular enough to avoid pattern recognition. The total balance was $41,000. $41,000 she had been quietly setting aside while I paid the mortgage, the utilities, Tyler's school supplies, her car insurance, and her gym membership without a second thought. I sat with that number for a long time after Neil told me. Then I said, "Can we prove it came from diverted household funds?" "Working on it," Neil said. "But even if we can't fully trace the source, the existence of the account, hidden, never disclosed, accumulated during the marriage, is a material asset she'll be required to declare. If she doesn't declare it voluntarily, we will." I thanked him and went back to work. I had a crew installing a new commercial plumbing system at a medical office building in Westerville, and I spent the rest of that afternoon on site, doing what I'd always done, showing up, getting my hands dirty, making sure the job was done right. There's something grounding about physical work when your head is full of things you can't fix with your hands. It doesn't solve anything, but it keeps you upright. On day 8, Russell Payne called me back. "I've retained an attorney," he said. "We're filing for paternity establishment. I wanted you to hear it from me before the papers arrived." "I appreciate that," I said. I was sitting in my truck in the medical building parking lot, the engine off, watching a pigeon work its way across the asphalt with great determination. "What are you hoping for, Russell?" "In terms of Tyler." He was quiet for a moment. "I don't want to be a disruption," he said carefully. "I know that boy has a life. I know you've been his father in every way that counts. I'm not trying to undo that." Another pause. "But I want him to know I exist. I want the chance to know him. That's all I'm asking for right now." It was a reasonable thing to ask for. I told him so. He sounded surprised that I'd said it, which told me he'd been bracing for a fight. "One thing," I said. "Whatever happens legally, Tyler finds out the truth from me. Not from a court document. Not from Naomi's lawyer. From me. Can you agree to that?" "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "Absolutely." We hung up. I sat there another few minutes. Then I started the truck and drove back to the job site, because there were pipes to check and a crew waiting for answers, and the work didn't stop for any of this. It came on a Wednesday evening, 11 days after the party. I was helping Tyler with a math worksheet at the kitchen table, long division, which he despised with the focused passion of a 9-year-old who had been wronged by numbers. Naomi was upstairs. We could hear her moving around, the occasional muffled sound of her voice on the phone. Tyler worked a problem, checked his answer twice, then looked up at me with that expression he got when something had been sitting in his brain too long. "Dad," he said, "at school today, Mason said something." I kept my voice even. "What did Mason say?" Tyler looked back at his worksheet. "He said his mom told him that you're not my real dad." He paused. "He said my real dad is somebody else. Is that true?" The kitchen felt very still. I set down my pencil and turned to face him fully. "Tyler, look at me." He did. His eyes were steady and serious. He'd always been a serious kid, older than his years in some ways. "Mason's mom doesn't know our family," I said. "What I can tell you is this. I have been here every single day of your life that I can remember. I was at your first baseball game, and your second, and your third. I'm the one who sat with you in the ER when you broke your arm in second grade. I'm the one who drives you to school and helps you fight long division." I held his gaze. "Does any of that feel like something a real dad would do?" He thought about it with the same deliberate focus he gave math problems. "No," he said. "I mean, yes. That's what real dads do." "That's right." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "But is there somebody else? Like, somebody I don't know?" I took a breath. This was the moment I'd been turning over in my mind for 11 days. I wasn't going to lie to him, but I wasn't going to drop the full weight of it on a 9-year-old on a Wednesday night over long division either. "There are some things your mom and I need to talk about first," I said, "and then you and I are going to have a longer conversation, a real one, where I answer all your questions. I promise you that. But I need you to trust me that I'm going to tell you the truth. Can you do that?" Tyler studied me for a long second. Then he nodded. One firm nod, the way he did when he'd made up his mind about something. "Okay," he said, and he went back to his worksheet. I sat there watching him work and felt something tighten in my chest that had nothing to do with Naomi or Derek Fowler or Russell Payne or $41,000 in a hidden bank account. It had to do with this boy sitting next to me, chewing on his pencil eraser, who deserved better than the situation that had been built around him without his knowledge. The next morning I called Neil Stratton and told him it was time to move. Not because I'd run out of patience. I had plenty of that left. But because Tyler had asked me a direct question, and I had promised him a real answer, and I was not the kind of man who let promises sit on a shelf. 2 more days, Neil said. The forensic accountant finishes his report tomorrow. We file Friday. Friday, I agreed. I hung up and went to work. But all day, on every job site, in every conversation with every crew member, part of my mind was on a 9-year-old boy and a pencil eraser and the particular weight of a question that deserved an honest answer. The forensic accountant's report landed on Neil Stratton's desk Thursday afternoon. 23 pages detailing every irregularity in our joint finances going back 3 years. Neil called me while I was on site in Westerville, and I stepped away from the crew to take it in the parking lot, leaning against my truck with the November wind cutting straight through my work jacket. The summary was methodical and damning. Beyond the retitled truck and the drained college fund, the report identified a pattern of cash withdrawals from our joint checking account. Always on Thursdays, always between $200 and $300, always at an ATM 2 miles from Naomi's office building. 41 withdrawals over 22 months. The total came to just over $9,000. Combined with the hidden savings account, Naomi had moved approximately $50,000 out of our shared life without my knowledge or consent. She's been doing this since before Derek Fowler, Neil said. This predates him by at least 8 months. Meaning this wasn't about him, I said. Meaning she had an exit plan before she had a reason most people would recognize as one. Or the reason came first, and she kept it private. He paused. Either way, the documentation is solid. We file tomorrow morning. I'll have the papers served at her office Friday afternoon. I thought about that for a second. Her office. The law firm where she worked, surrounded by attorneys. She's going to recognize the legal exposure immediately, I said. Yes, Neil said. That's the point. She'll have no time to prepare a counter-narrative before the weekend. Her employer will know by end of business Friday. And Russell Payne's attorney filed for paternity establishment this morning. That process is now officially in motion as well. I stood in that parking lot for a moment after we hung up, watching one of my guys haul copper pipe across the lot with the focused efficiency of a man who knew exactly what his job was. There was something I respected enormously about that, about knowing your function and performing it cleanly. I'd spent 22 years building a business on exactly that principle. Naomi had spent 22 months quietly dismantling everything I'd built. I went back to work. I spent the rest of Thursday doing what I always did, running the job, checking the fittings, making sure everything was right. My guys didn't know anything was wrong because I didn't perform difficulty. I dealt with it privately and showed up intact. That was the only way I knew how to operate. Thursday evening, something unexpected happened. I was in the garage reviewing the week's job invoices when Derek Fowler called my personal cell. I didn't recognize the number at first, but he identified himself immediately. His voice was controlled, but there was something underneath it that sounded like a man trying to negotiate his way out of a burning building. "Mr. Merritt," he said, "I know you have no reason to take this call. I'm asking you to give me 5 minutes. "You've got 3, I said. He took a breath. "I need you to know that what happened between Naomi and me, I'm not going to pretend it wasn't wrong. It was. But I want you to know that she represented to me that your marriage was essentially over, that you've been living separately for months and everything but paperwork. And you believe that." I did. I shouldn't have. I should have walked away the moment she told me that. He paused. "The reason I'm calling is because I'm under investigation. Internal review. And Naomi has been asked to provide a statement. I don't know what she's going to say, but I want you to know that I'm not going to lie to protect her. Whatever she told you about me, I'm cooperating fully with HR. If that helps your case in any way, I'm prepared to confirm my cooperation through your attorney." I was quiet for a moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm not a good man in this situation," Derek said, "but I'm not the worst one either. And I think you deserve to know that the woman you married had this planned out a lot further in advance than one party in a bathroom." I didn't thank him, but I told him to send a statement to Neil Stratton's office, and I told him Neil's name. He said he would. We hung up. I sat with that for a long time. Then I added the call to my log, noted the time, and went inside to check on Tyler. Friday changed everything, and it changed it fast. Neil's process server reached Naomi at the law firm at 2:47 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because Neil texted it to me. I was in the cab of my truck outside a supply house in Gahanna when my phone buzzed, and I read the message twice before I pulled out of the parking lot. Naomi called me at 3:15. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 3:32. Then at 3:50 she sent a text that read, "We need to talk right now. This is insane. Call me." I called Neil instead. "How'd she react?" I asked. "Her supervisor called me directly about 20 minutes after service," Neil said. I could hear the controlled satisfaction in his voice, the way a good attorney sounds when a plan executes cleanly. Apparently, Naomi became visibly distressed in the office. The managing partner, who I gather is not unaware of the HR situation around Derek Fowler, asked her to take the rest of the day. He paused. She's also now aware that Russell Payne's filing is active. Both pieces of news arrived at the same hour. "Good. Clayton," Neil said, "she's going to come home tonight wanting to negotiate. She's going to be emotional. She may be apologetic. And she is absolutely going to try to find out how much you know. Don't tell her. Don't negotiate. Don't engage on the merits of anything. If she brings up the finances, you tell her to contact my office. If she brings up Tyler, you tell her that Tyler's welfare is your first priority and that your attorney will be in touch." "That's it." "Understood," I said. I drove home. Tyler was at a school friend's house until 6. I'd arranged that 2 days earlier, quietly, through his friend's mother. I wanted the first hour to happen without him in the building. Naomi was already home. Her car was in the driveway. I walked in through the front door and found her sitting at the kitchen table, still in her work clothes, her hands flat on the table in front of her like she was trying to hold herself down. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes were red at the edges but dry. She'd been crying, but she'd composed herself. I had to give her credit for that. She didn't fall apart easily. "Sit down," she said. "I'm fine standing," I said. I set my keys on the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed, giving her nothing. "You filed for divorce," she said. Her voice was even, but just barely, without saying a word to me, without one conversation. "We've had several conversations," I said. "You spent most of them telling me I was the problem. Clayton, Naomi. I kept my voice measured. I know about the hidden account. I know about the $41,000. I know about the $9,000 in Thursday ATM withdrawals. I know about the truck retitling. And so, does a document examiner who's currently reviewing whether your signature on that transfer document is actually mine? I watched her face as each item landed. I know about Russell Payne. I know he didn't walk out on you. I know he didn't know about Tyler. And I know you've been in contact with him for 4 months while telling me nothing. I straightened up. I know enough. My attorney knows the rest. She stared at me. The composed surface had developed visible fractures. Her jaw was tight. Her hands had curled slightly on the table. I was going to tell you, she said, about Russell. I was trying to figure out how. You had 5 years to figure out how, I said. You managed to figure out how to open a secret bank account. You managed to figure out how to move money in amounts designed to avoid detection. You clearly can figure things out when they serve your interests. She flinched. That's not fair. Fair. I said the word slowly, giving it its full weight. Naomi, you took $12,000 from Tyler's college account and moved it to a fund you were going to walk away with. You did that to your own son. I shook my head. We're past fair. She was quiet for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice and went silent. What happens to Tyler? She finally asked. Her voice was smaller now, stripped to the performance. Tyler gets the truth, I said. From me. At the right time, in the right way. And then he gets stability, which means he stays in this house, in his school, with his routines. Whatever the custody arrangement looks like, that doesn't change. I held her gaze. But that's between our attorneys now, not us. She looked at the table. Then she nodded once, small, defeated, the first honest gesture she'd made since the night of the party. I picked up my keys and walked out of the kitchen. I had 45 minutes before Tyler came home, and I used every one of them sitting on the back porch in the cold, watching the yard go dark, letting the hardest part settle. When Tyler's ride pulled into the driveway, I was at the door to meet him. He had a smear of something that looked like chocolate frosting on his left cheek, and an expression of pure, 9-year-old contentment. How was it? I asked. Awesome, he said, and walked past me into the house without breaking stride. I smiled for the first time all day. The preliminary hearing was set for a Tuesday morning in early December, 3 weeks after the divorce papers were served. Neil had warned me it would be procedural, establishing timelines, acknowledging filings, setting the framework for the full proceedings. What he hadn't warned me about was how strange it would feel to sit on one side of a courtroom table and watch the woman I had shared a bed with for 5 years sit on the other side, flanked by an attorney she had retained 2 days after service. Her lawyer was a woman named Patricia, not the same Patricia as mine, a coincidence that Neil found mildly amusing and I found mildly surreal. She was competent and polished, and she argued her opening position with precision. Naomi, she said, had made personal errors in judgment, but had been an active and present parent throughout the marriage. She acknowledged the financial discrepancies as matters to be resolved in discovery. She did not acknowledge the hidden account directly, which told me they were going to try to reframe it. Neil didn't react to any of this. He'd been doing this for 20 years, and nothing in a preliminary hearing surprised him. When it was his turn, he laid out the documented record with the same calm efficiency as a blueprint. The retitled truck, the hidden savings account, the $41,000, the $9,000 in structured ATM withdrawals, the college fund drainage. He placed each item on the table like a contractor laying tile, measured, level, unargued. The judge, a compact man in his 60s with the expression of someone who had heard every variation of every story, made a brief note after each item. When Neil mentioned the document examiner's finding regarding the vehicle transfer, the judge looked up and asked Naomi's attorney a direct question. She answered carefully. He made another note. We were out in under 2 hours. Outside in the corridor, Neil walked beside me toward the elevator. She's going to negotiate, he said. Her attorney knows the document fraud exposure is real. They don't want that to go further. Expect an offer within 10 days. What kind of offer? She concedes the truck and the college fund repayment. She probably fights for a portion of the hidden account, claiming she was building personal savings within the marriage. We counter. We'll settle somewhere in the middle of a range that still substantially favors you. He pressed the elevator button. The custody framework is actually cleaner than I expected. She didn't contest primary residence with you. She's asking for standard visitation. That worked for Tyler, I said. That's all that matters, Neil agreed. 10 days later, exactly as predicted, the offer came. Naomi's attorney proposed a settlement that returned the truck, repaid the college fund in full, split the hidden account 60-40 in my favor, and established primary custody with me with alternating weekends for Naomi. The structured withdrawals were absorbed into the overall settlement calculation. Neil and I discussed it for 40 minutes. Then I signed. The thing about a settlement is that it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a door closing, the soft, final click of something that used to be open. I drove home from Neil's office through a light December snow and thought about 5 years of mornings and dinners and Tyler's baseball games and the particular way Naomi used to hum while she made coffee, and I let myself feel the weight of it for exactly the length of that drive. Then I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and walked inside. Tyler was at the kitchen table doing homework. He looked up when I came in and asked if I wanted to hear what he'd learned about the Continental Army. I said yes. I sat down, poured myself a glass of water, and listened. 2 days before Christmas, Russell Payne drove up from Cincinnati for what we had quietly agreed to call a first introduction. No attorneys, no formal framework, just 2 men and a boy at a diner on the east side of Columbus. On a Tuesday morning, when the snow was coming down steady and the parking lot was half empty, I brought Tyler. I told him the night before, calmly, carefully, in the way I had promised him I would, that there was a man named Russell who was his biological father, that this man had not known about him until recently, and that none of it changed a single thing about our relationship. Tyler had sat very still through this, asking 2 questions, whether Russell seemed like a good person and whether I was going to stop being his dad. I told him Russell seemed like an honest man, trying to do right by a situation he'd been kept out of. And I told him that fathers aren't made by biology. They're made by showing up every day for years. That I had done that and intended to keep doing it. Tyler nodded. Then he asked if we could have pancakes at the diner. We had pancakes. Russell arrived 10 minutes after us. A lean, quiet man who looked like he'd rehearsed his composure and mostly achieved it. He shook my hand first, which I respected. Then he looked at Tyler and said, simply, "Hey, buddy, it's good to finally meet you." Tyler looked at him with the careful assessment of a 9-year-old who had decided to withhold judgment until further evidence was available. Then he said, "Do you like baseball?" Russell's face opened up into something genuine. "I played in high school," he said. "I'm a shortstop," Tyler said, and moved over to make room at the booth. I drank my coffee and watched them talk, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been unsettled since November. Not happiness exactly, but rightness. The particular rightness of a complicated thing being handled with honesty and decency by the people involved. That was enough for me. More than enough. Actually, it was exactly what Tyler deserved. January arrived with a hard freeze and more work than I could comfortably schedule. 3 commercial contracts came in the first 2 weeks of the new year. A medical clinic expansion, a restaurant remodel, and a school district job that would keep 2 of my crews busy through March. I hired 2 additional plumbers in February, bringing the total to 16. The business that I had built from a second-hand van and a handshake 22 years ago was, by any reasonable measure, doing exactly what it was designed to do. I moved through that winter with a particular kind of focus that I hadn't had in years. Not the grinding, head-down focus of a man trying to hold things together. The clean, forward-moving focus of a man who knows what he's working toward. Tyler had his routines. School, baseball practice twice a week, Tuesday dinners with me at the kitchen table over whatever I'd managed to put together. He was adjusting to the new shape of things with the resilience that kids have when the adults around them are honest and steady. He saw Naomi on alternating weekends. Those exchanges were businesslike and civil, brief, at the door, coordinated through texts when necessary. She had moved into an apartment in the short North District, a place I'd never been and didn't need to see. Whatever she was building from the rubble of what she'd done, she was building it without my involvement. Derek Fowler had been terminated from the law firm in early December following the completion of the internal investigation. The review found that he had used company resources and client relationships to conduct a private business arrangement that violated his employment contract in multiple clauses. Naomi's testimony to HR, from what Neil's sources indicated, had been factual but not protective of Derek. She had enough self-preservation instinct left to know that shielding him would only deepen her own exposure. Russell Payne began driving up from Cincinnati once a month. He and Tyler had settled into a cautious, genuine rhythm. Video calls every couple of weeks, a baseball game in the spring that all three of us attended without incident. Russell was, as I had told Tyler, an honest man trying to do right by a situation he hadn't created. I found I could respect that without difficulty. In February, Tyler came home from school with a crayon drawing he'd made in art class. The assignment had been to draw your family. He'd drawn a house with a big tree in the yard. In front of the house were two figures, one tall, one small. The tall one was labeled Dad in his careful block letters. I put it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like the state of Ohio. That spring, I bought out the final note on my business property, a warehouse and office space I've been paying down for 11 years. I stood in the empty parking lot on a Saturday morning in April with a coffee going cold in my hand and looked at the building that had my name on the sign above the door and felt the particular satisfaction of a thing fully owned. I thought about $50,000 quietly moved into someone else's future. I thought about a hidden account and a retitled truck and a plan that had been running in the background of my life for the better part of 2 years. I thought about all the ways that could have gone differently. If I hadn't gone to that party, if I hadn't walked down that corridor, if I hadn't made that phone call to Neil Stratton at 7:15 on a Friday morning. And then I thought about Tyler at a diner booth, moving over to make room for a man he just met, asking him about baseball. I finished my coffee, went inside, and got back to work. Some men build things with blueprints and grand announcements. I've always been more comfortable with the quiet version. Showing up, doing the job right, leaving something solid behind. That's who I am. That's who I was going to stay.